They Were the Last Resort, Part 4, by Hylian Hero 71. March 23, 2034. Bridge. UHS Stern Resolve. Entering Sol in 5. The navigator reported, as the bridge of the ship tensely prepared for battle. After decoding the order chip, they knew there was going to be a fight, but of what kind, no one could say. Order all ships to battle stations, Logan ordered from the command chair. Send a message to Johnson and Parker. We're about to engage the enemy. Logan was tense with anticipation. It had been 12 long years since he had last seen his home. No matter what condition it was in, it was sure to be special. The new intel had complicated things. The Alliance was doing something in Sol, and it had something to do with him. He was going to learn why. Report from Admiral Parker, sir, the intelligence officer reported, passing Logan a datapad. He took it, checking the progress report. Apparently, resistance was thicker than anticipated, and the encircling forces were taking damage, but they were on schedule to close the gap nonetheless. 2 of the 3 colonized planets had been reached and were under siege. Then there was the part of the report he didn't want to read. Casualty reports. There were already enough to make him look away, forcing his mind to focus on something else. Dropping speed in 10 seconds, the helmsman reported. Logan braced himself. Dropping speed always made him queasy. The final prep was done. All hands on every ship in the force was ready for battle. It had been years since any of them had fought, but they all had. This was simply once more into the breach. There's a speed interdictor in the system, dropping out as close as possible, the helmsman said as the ship lurched, dropping speed by several orders of magnitude as the fleet entered normal space, near Jupiter. The whole bridge stared for a moment, all of them filled with an unexplainable emotion at seeing that planet once more. The Titan of Sol. Report, Logan asked, as the crew ran active scans, as no visible defenses appeared to lie beyond the asteroid belt. Sensors are accurate, sir, the technical officer said. There's nothing outside the asteroid belt. Beyond, it's hard to say. Seems like some sort of sensor scrambler, because we can't get any concrete data. Suffice to say there's life forms in there, as well as alloys and engine exhaust. Sorry, that's as good as we're going to get before we go in. Understood, Logan responded. He knew that going in with functionally zero intel was a serious lapse in judgment, and that he was risking the strongest ships humanity had by doing this. But being back home had filled him with an unyielding resolve. Take us in, he ordered. Destroy any artificial installations or ships located. Head for Earth orbit. As the fleet began to maneuver through the asteroid belt, Logan knew it wouldn't be long now. They were nearly home. 2 hours before, Alliance Internal Security Headquarters, Freedom's Triumph. Krytek groaned as he came to, his head numb with pain as if he'd been beaten, which he supposed he had. He tried to gather his bearings, but whatever room he was inside was pitch dark, and he was bound to whatever chair he was in. He knew where he was, and that did not alleviate his fears. A bright light flashed on, blinding him. A figure stood in the light, though he couldn't place who or what they were. Then, they spoke with a voice that contained a tone of barely suppressed anger. Name and rank, she asked. Krytek Constable, Captain of the Navy, he said with some effort. The last thing he remembered was checking the progress of the operatives as he made his way toward the extraction ship. He hoped the humans had made it. 2 of them were supposed to leave with him, and he clearly wasn't going anywhere. Yes, Captain Krytek, recipient of the Cross of Bravery, the Star of Honor, and 6 service marks, honored veteran of the war. Why would such a man collaborate against his government? The voice said, reading each of his honors as more of an accusation than awards. I have no idea what you're talking about, Krytek lied, struggling against his bonds. The figure stepped forward, removing a small stick. She thrust it into his chest, a current of electricity bolting through his body, along with excruciating pain. Don't lie to me, she said. It's unbecoming of someone of your rank and stature. Go to hell, Krytek gasped out as he caught his breath, reeling from the pain. Ah, there it is. A human phrase, I believe. I knew you were working with them on the assassinations. We may not have been able to capture any of your accomplices, but we got you, the figure said, sitting down across from him, the stick menacingly held in their hand. I want everything you know about the humans. How many are there? How many ships do they have and where are they? I know you know this, and you're going to tell me. I will tell you nothing, he said resolutely, though his resolve was wounded by another jab from the stick. "Come now, Captain. I can be reasonable. Just give the intel, and you're free to go," they said, their voice not giving away whether they were honest or not. "Never," he said, though he was cut short by another long jab of pain. The interrogator stood up, pacing back and forth in front of him. "I have my ways, Captain. Don't make me use them. Let's start small, shall we? I know you once knew an individual by the name of Logan Wayne. Is he alive?" There it was. A hint. The interrogator had gone too far too quickly, and Krytek had heard the desire in their voice. He had no idea why, but they were very invested as to whether Logan was alive. "I don't know who that is." He lied again. "Yes, you do. Now answer me. Is he alive, or is he dead?" they demanded, jabbing him once more until he could barely stay conscious. He thought he saw something behind the interrogator, but he knew it was just the pain. "Fine then. Maybe a few hours with the boys will make you more talkative. Believe me, if you think this hurts, you haven't seen anything yet. And if you want something to think about, know that you have achieved nothing. The humans are in for quite the surprise in Seoul, and I doubt you'll be able to help." Suddenly there was a shadow as someone else entered the light, and the distinctive noise of a knife plunging into flesh filled the air. The interrogator slumped to the floor, and the light was finally switched off. Before Krytek could even ask who his savior was, his bonds were cut, and they were helping him to his feet. "You look a little worse for wear, Captain," said Sophia, one of the operatives he was supposed to extract with. "You're supposed to be off-world," he sputtered, as he gathered his breath. "You weren't at the rendezvous and I was worried. I was able to piggyback onto Alliance systems to track you," she said simply, as if that was a good enough reason to attack possibly the most dangerous place on the planet. "Well, it was foolhardy, dangerous, and some might say idiotic to come here, just to save an old captain. And I thank you," he said, as she slung one of his arms over her shoulder. "You're welcome, you big cockroach," she said with a smile. "Now, let's get going. I did take out a few guards getting to you, and I didn't have time to hide the bodies." "Yes, we need to get to your brethren before whatever the Alliance is planning can happen," he said, as they hobbled out of the room. Sol System, UHS Stern Resolve. The ship shuddered one last time as the fleet exited the asteroid belt. Definitely worse for wear. The whole belt had been mined, small fusion weapons disguised as asteroids. Several ships were heavily damaged, though none destroyed. "Entering visible range of Earth," the intel officer reported, bringing the image of the homeworld on screen. "Intel, kindly explain what the hell I'm looking at?" Logan asked, staring at the image of Earth. Everyone in the room was staring at the image with shock. "That's hard to say, sir," the officer answered, staring at his readouts. The planet before them was mostly what they had expected. The northern and southern portions of the planet were a mix of brown and tan, the atmosphere a brown haze. And yet, that was not the strange part. Running along the equator of the planet was a band of blue and green, with white clouds circling above it. "Judging by these scans, which are far from conclusive, it looks to be in the early stages of terraforming. But it's also been in this state for at least a few years. Usually a terraforming project would have moved beyond this state by now," the officer reported. "Is it habitable?" Logan asked curiously. "How similar is it to old Earth?" "Yes, it's habitable, for about 1,000 miles around the equator. Very similar. It would appear the Alliance had a vested interest in making it as close as possible to the original version of our planet. Is there anyone down there?" There was nothing visible from space to indicate intelligent life. "If there is, there's not much. The jammers are making it hard to get clear readings. But I guess there's someone down there. Might be a colony." "We've got contacts," the technical officer reported, as a series of red dots marked themselves on the screen and map. A small fleet was holding a defensive position around Earth, ready for them. Logan thought for a moment before giving orders. He held numerical superiority. In fact, he had them nearly 2-1. Something nagged at him, but he pushed it away. "Send a transmission to Johnson, and tell him to ready his men for orbital insertion. All ships forward. I want the only thing left around that planet to be human." With an ominous lurch, the fleet increased speed toward Earth, assuming an offensive stance. "Fire as soon as we enter weapons range," he ordered. The human fleet passed Mars, and soon they passed the Moon. Both sides were ready. This would be a bloody fight. The enemy formed into a defensive array, their weapons trained on the oncoming fleet. And so the human force hurled itself on the enemy that had dared take their planet, and all hell broke loose. Mac rounds hurled through the dark of space, passing the charged plasma of the enemy. Ships on either side were struck, disabled, and destroyed in quick succession. Ships passed within meters of one another, point defense networks pressed into service as normal batteries. The battle was rough and bloody, but from the first shot, everyone knew the humans would win. After only 30 minutes of battle, a flanking attack by the human fleet broke the Alliance lines, and what little was left of the Alliance fleet made a blind jump out of the system. Logan had just won the first battle fought by humanity since the war. He should have been elated, or at least glad they were victorious, but he felt none of that. 12 ships had been destroyed in the fighting, and many good men were dead beneath his command. "Surround the planet," he ordered. "Sir, the scramblers just went offline. I've got planetary scans," the intel officer reported. "Looks like a few cities, mostly clustered in what used to be South America." "Understood. I think this is a job for General Johnson," Logan said. "Send a transmission telling him to begin operations at his earliest convenience." "I've got something else, sir," the intel officer added, as the communicator began transmitting to Johnson. "A small complex quite removed from the cities. Sensors can't penetrate it, but I say it's military of some kind." Logan thought for a moment. Something like this was most unusual. "Send a team down to investigate. Keep it quiet. Send our best." The officers nodded, and Logan leaned back in his seat. His part of the job was over. Now it was Johnson's job to take the planet. 30 minutes later, Launching Bay, UHS Indomitable Spirit. The tension in the launching bay was palpable, as the soldiers gathered into their units, standing at attention in the center of the room, waiting to board their shuttles. Weapons were ready, equipment double-checked. It had been years since anyone had seen combat, but they all remembered. This was supposed to be the first battle to have a real meaning in a long time. The door leading into the bay hissed, and the general walked inside as every soldier stood at attention. A lit cigarette was in his mouth, and his voice came roughly as he addressed the men, simultaneously broadcast to every troop ship in the fleet. "It's been a long time since we've done this, boys. We're finally back home. But it seems that there's something down there these alien bastards are so hot for they risk taking our planet. Well, I don't know about you, but I say we don't let them have it. I say we go and take back what's ours." The room roared, each soldier crying out with readiness for battle. "They will be prepared for us," the general continued. "We will have losses. The soil of our earth will be stained with blood, but that will not stop us. Now get out there and show those Xenos why you do not screw with the human race. Am I right, soldiers?" "Sir, yes, sir," boomed through the rooms of each ship as the units turned on their heels and marched into the shuttles. Soon they were clear of the troop ships, a cloud of small craft hurtling into the atmosphere, splitting into spearheads, each heading toward a different settlement. Back in their war rooms, Logan and Johnson watched the ships head toward their targets on the tactical maps. "History will remember this day, my friend," Johnson said, as the first ships made landfall near their targets. "Hopefully it remembers it fondly," Logan remarked, watching as a single shuttle diverted, setting down near the isolated compound. They had just received word. Parker had met with the Second Force, fully completing humanity's encirclement of the disputed territories. The first of the 3 colonized planets had surrendered, and the other 2 were weakening by the minute. As battles began to rage in at least a dozen different cities across the planet's surface, Logan knew that this was the day humanity would remember. He tried to ignore it, but something told him the Alliance wasn't done just yet.